Welcome back to the life of Tash Mia. I'm Tash. So, on today's solo episode, what I thought might be fun is if I answered the top 10 Googled questions about professional dominatrixes. Reminder as always, this is my personal experience. I am not speaking on behalf of every professional dominatrix out there. Let's get straight into it. The first most Googled question around professional dominatrix was, what does a professional dominatrix do? Now, it's crazy to think because I sometimes just assume people know what a dominatrix is. But to be honest, it's probably 50-50. 50% of people have an idea of what it is, and 50% of people are like, what the hell is that? It's not such a simple answer, I think. A lot of people will say, oh, you just bash men up. However, I think as most listeners of this show would know, it's far from that. Firstly, it could be men, it could be women, it could be couples, it could be trans, it could be non-binary. Like, it's for everyone. Everyone can see a professional dom. And it's also a lot more than just bashing someone up. The core of what I do is power exchange. That's really what BDSM is. I don't need to lift a finger to engage in power exchange with someone. I don't need to do one single activity to do a power exchange with someone. So at the basis of what BDSM is, it's consensual power exchange. Now, what I do as a professional dominatrix is lead and facilitate sessions to achieve my clients' goals. Now, these goals can vary. They could be sexual goals, they could be mental health goals, they could be growth goals, they could be personal goals. It depends. Everyone's different and everyone has different goals. But my role is to use my consented position of power to lead my clients to achieve their goals safely and sanely. So I can facilitate achieving these goals through using BDSM or kink activities. Now, these are things such as bondage, impact play, sensory play, humiliation, CBT. We kind of know generally the activities. However, the most important thing is I cannot do anything without prior consent by my client or submissive. And that consent can be revoked at any time. So even if they said yes at the beginning of a session, like in our pre-scene chat, and we're in the middle of doing that thing and they're like, this ain't feeling good, consent has been revoked and I must stop. So, number 2, how to become a professional dominatrix. It's good to know that so many people are investigating this. So there's a couple of options. You can find a professional or a lifestyle dom. For those that don't know, a lifestyle dom is just someone who does it in their personal life as opposed to someone who does it professionally like myself and gets paid for it. I would encourage you to get someone who is experienced, preferably highly experienced, to train you. Or another option is to get like a traineeship at a dungeon where you might assist for a while a professional dominatrix in exchange for training. Also these days, there's also online courses. You can get coaching, you can get mentorships. However, if you do plan to go into it professionally and you are undertaking an online course, I would highly encourage you to get some one-to-one coaching or mentorship alongside because it is there are different aspects to just doing it in your personal life as opposed to as a profession. You also ideally need to practice everything you learn before you try, even if it's just on yourself. So, number 3, where to find professional dominatrix services. So this will depend where you are, but mostly these days it's online. There's directories of independent dominatrixes, similar to those ones of escorts. A lot of the times they're combined. So one part of the site will be for an escort and the other part will be BDSM. Or you can go to a BDSM house if you're in a city that has one or a few. In those cases, these houses employ several professional DOMs who will work in shifts generally, and you can rock up and kind of see who's on and have a session. Or you could, if you have frequented the place multiple times, you could pre-book in with a particular DOM that you like. So, number 4, are professional dominatrix services legal? Again, this depends where you are and the definition, interpretation of a sexual or lewd act, as some people say. Look, if sex work is legal where you are, 100% you're going to be fine and it's legal. But you need to remember that everything still needs to be consented to. Otherwise, you're going into abuse territory. However, in some places, it's a bit blurry because nothing is penetrated, it's not considered sex work, but it could still be considered a lewd act. So it's really muddy waters in some areas when they have those definitions. My advice is, unless you know you're in a place where sex work is legal, then you do run a bit of a risk. Number 5, what are the benefits of BDSM and domination submission relationships? Look, in every relationship that we have in our lives, power dynamics come into play. Whether it's your personal relationships, your work relationships, there's power dynamics happening all the time. So with people who have experience and are knowledgeable about power dynamic relationships, so for example, I mean people who are already living a kink and BDSM lifestyle, they generally are able to handle power dynamics in a much healthier way. Even in just vanilla relationships, so, non-kink relationships, power does go back and forth between partners. It's a natural part of human interaction and relationships. But as I said, if you are into the kink and BDSM lifestyle, you will be a bit more aware of these power dynamics and probably navigate them with a bit more ease. Some other notable benefits, though, I really believe is enhanced communication. BDSM and kink lifestyles and relationships require such clear communication about desires, boundaries, consent, your ability to have open and honest conversations. So you really do get very good communication skills, and because you're getting practice all the time, you're always talking about things. You're very good about having difficult conversations too. Another benefit, I think, is the exploration of fantasies. You are creating a safe place where people can consensually explore their fantasies. And this can lead to a lot of self-discovery, a lot of self-growth. And that can be very fulfilling in your life and in your relationships. I think you also get a sense of increased trust because trust is so essential in a BDSM dynamic. You are giving the dominant and the submissive partner huge amounts of trust when you're entering into an agreement. So it's only natural that your bond is really going to strengthen because of it. It's going to actually strengthen the relationship as a whole from engaging in that power dynamic activity and relationship. I also think you can get a heightened sense of intimacy, which I think, it's similar to, an increased bond, but because you're engaging in this really power dynamic level, it can really bring a really heightened emotional intimacy as well, and connection with your partner or whoever you're playing with. It's also really great for stress relief. I've said this many times before, up to 40% or more, I would think, of people engage in BDSM activities for stress release purposes. Studies have shown that its benefits of practicing BDSM are similar to those of meditation, as where the frontal part of your brain can switch off. So you get a very meditative state from your practice. Also, self-discovery. You can explore so many different roles of yourself within BDSM. You might explore a side of yourself you didn't know, or a side of yourself you haven't uncovered. You might discover different desires. You might discover different boundaries. So there's a lot of self-exploration that comes along with BDSM relationships as well. I think also one of the most powerful things is empowerment and control. Both dominants and submissives can experience a sense of empowerment through exploring and controlling the power dynamics and taking on these different roles. Owning this and stepping into it is so empowering. Again, whether you're a dominant or a submissive, because you are taking control of what you want, your desires, your boundaries, and really exploring them to their fullest potential. Number 6, how to safely explore BDSM practices with a professional dominatrix. Firstly, do your research. Before even meeting with a professional dominatrix, take the time to research various BDSM activities. There's a lot of checklists that you can find online these days, or lists of BDSM activities where you literally just run down the list and kind of get an understanding of, okay, like, what am I interested in? What might be my limits around something? Where's my interest being piqued? What are my desires? So that's a really good place to start, is kind of understand what you might be looking for. Once you kind of know what you're looking for, or got a little bit of an inkling, choose a reputable dominatrix. Look for a professional with a good reputation. Like most sites where dominatrixes advertise, clients can leave reviews. So look for good reviews. Maybe look for a dom that has experience in the activities or the side of BDSM that you are interested in exploring. Also, never go into a scene with a professional, or a non-professional in that case, without a very lengthy pre-scene negotiation. I personally would never do a scene without a pre-scene negotiation in person as well. I have had this requested in the past. People want to turn up to my door and start a scene straight away. I will not do it. Firstly, anyone could be emailing me, anyone could be texting me. My consent is whoever is in my studio on the day. That's the person I need to get consent from. So I would never go into a scene unless I've had a very lengthy pre-scene negotiation. So in this, you're going to clearly communicate your interests, limits, and any health concerns you have to the dominatrix. You're going to discuss safe words, boundaries, and expectations before the scene begins. And most importantly, this is where you will discuss and give consent. Both parties, so the professional dom and the submissive, must agree to activities, and you must respect each other's boundaries at all times. So it's not just the submissive's boundaries. Even though it's a professional dominatrix, she will have, or he will have, their own boundaries too. I would also make sure that the dominatrix that you're seeing is following all safety protocols, safe practices, things are cleaned, things are covered, if you know what I mean, and that they have a knowledge of first aid procedures just in case there's an emergency. My next tip on how to keep things safe would be to start slow. I mean, I always say this, start slower than slow and softer than soft. And it's so true, particularly if you're new to BDSM. Start with simple activities and gradually explore more intense experiences as you become more comfortable. You don't need to do everything all at once. You don't need to rush through anything at all. Take your time, get comfortable. The next thing is aftercare. Again, you finish a scene, you do not just shove someone out the door and it's over. You really need to make sure to engage in proper aftercare. It's so important. Even if you're paying someone and you think, I don't want to pay this last 10 minutes or whatever just to do aftercare, But it is so important because this is where the physical comforting happens, the emotional support, and the debrief post the session. This is where you come back down to earth. Otherwise, you might crash after a scene. Is what we call a sub drop. So aftercare is very, very important. And lastly, follow up. Reflect on the experience. As soon as you finish a scene, even during aftercare, you might not really have the words, or you're probably not in the headspace to really give feedback. But once you kind of put your feet back on the ground and a bit of time has passed, you probably will have a bit more feedback, a bit more reflection on how the session went. So it's always really good to like check back in with that dominatrix, especially if you want to have future sessions. So number 7 now, common myths and misconceptions about professional dominatrixes. I actually did a whole episode on this last year. So if you maybe want a bit of a longer take on that, go back and watch that one. But look, I'll address some of the big ones that really pop up. The first one is that it's all about sex. I think that's a very common misconception, is that sessions with a professional dominatrix always involve sexual activities. In reality, as we've talked about, the focus is on power dynamics, BDSM practices, and a lot of the psychological aspects of the craft. Traditionally, pro-doms do not provide sexual services. So I think that's still one that people need to recognize. Another myth I encounter is there's a myth that professional dominatrixes exploit their clients. In truth, sessions are based on mutual consent. As I said, a professional dominatrix cannot do anything without her client's consent. There's boundaries in place, and there has to be mutual respect for each other. So clients are willingly participating in these sessions. They're not coerced into doing anything they don't want to do. Kind of aligning with this, I think, is people don't realize, lack of consent. Consent is so paramount in BDSM practices. It really is one of the fundamentals of BDSM, along with, communication, negotiation. And professional dominatrixes are skilled in negotiating boundaries and ensuring it's a safe and consensual experience for both of you. Another misconception I find a lot is once you tell someone that you're a professional dominatrix, they kind of have this stereotypical mean bitch screaming dom idea in their head. The stereotype that pro-doms are really aggressive, they're really cold, and they're uncaring. In reality, most dominatrixes are really compassionate, understanding, and prioritize the well-being of their client. You have to have a lot of empathy to be a professional dominatrix. You have to have a lot of care for people. So, thinking that we're all just like mean, harsh, unemotional individuals is a far cry out from what we really are. But look, these misconceptions, the way we get away from them is talking about BDSM, talking about professional dominatrixes, taking it out of the shadows so we can dispel these myths and misconceptions, and that society and individuals can have a better idea about the ethical way that people do engage in power dynamics in their lives. And number 8. So, understanding the psychology behind domination and submission. I really like that this is in the top 10 because for me, the psychology of power dynamics is one of the most interesting parts of it. It's part of human nature. It's part of our psychology as humans in all our relationships, as I've said. The dominant partner typically assumes the control and authority, while the submissive partner consents to relinquishing that control to the dominant. The power exchange is empowering for both parties, as I said. There needs to be trust and open communication. It's so essential in BDSM relationships, and both partners must communicate their boundaries. They need to talk about their desires, their limits, to make sure it's a safe and consensual experience. Trust is built over time, and it's so crucial because this is where the psychological aspects of domination and submission really come into play. It's founded on that trust. You can't let yourself psychologically go to that place unless you truly trust your partner. Another psychological aspect, I guess, of BDSM is probably role play and fantasy. BDSM involves a lot of role-playing scenarios, so it allows people to explore their fantasies in this safe and consensual environment. And engaging these different roles, you can explore different aspects of your personality, different places of yourself, I guess. So that's a really interesting way to think of BDSM play, is exploring all those different places in your mind and trying some new things out. We also get a lot of endorphin release from engaging in BDSM activities. We know that things like endorphins are released when we engage in BDSM activities, which leads to feelings of pleasure, euphoria, relaxation. This psychological response can contribute to the psychological aspects of domination and submission. So a lot of people love getting into, if you're a submissive, what we call the subspace. And this is likened to where you're in that meditative, transcendental, floaty kind of headspace. Often they can go very quiet. And for the dominant, you can go into what we call as flow, where you're very attention to detail, task orientated, confident, on your game. So they're kind of as a result of the chemicals that are kind of being released in our brains when we do BDSM activities. For many individuals, engaging in the domination and submission allows them to explore power dynamics, control. They can surrender in a controlled and consensual setting. Being able to do this psychologically leads to a lot of personal growth, a lot of self-discovery, and a deeper understanding of what your desires and boundaries are. And it's not just going to be limited to the playroom. When people's minds are opened up in this way through kink and BDSM activities, you're probably going to start discovering your desires and boundaries in life as well. So, number 9. Differences between a professional dominatrix and a regular escort service. Love this one. An easy answer is professional dominatrixes don't have sex. I guess it's a bit more than that. So services offered differs. A professional dominatrix specializes in BDSM practices. The focus, again, is on power dynamics, fetish play, exploration of kinks and fantasies. It's all about the dominant and submissive, the power exchange. It's all, in a consensual context. An escort, look, I'm sure there's plenty of escorts out there who are asked to do BDSM activities and provide that services, but traditionally they're a companion service, which may include social activities or going to an event or a dinner with someone, and it could be followed by, an intimate encounter. Their focus is on more providing company and entertainment, and the sexual intimacy aspect of things. So the services are a bit different in what we offer. The roles and expertise are different. As I said, a professional dominatrix is trained in the art of BDSM. She needs to know how to negotiate boundaries. She needs to know about safety protocols. She needs to know how to create a really immersive experience for her clients. While an escort is typically hired, as I said, for companionship, maybe emotional support, or sex services. The professional setting is different. Sessions with a professional dominatrix often take place in a very well-equipped dungeon or studio setting so that you can conduct BDSM activities. There is a lot of equipment associated with BDSM, especially if you're a professional. So it's a bit harder to just kind of pack up and go to someone else. So mostly you will be going to the professional dominatrix. Escorts really can occur anywhere, whether that's in someone's private residence or a hotel or, a social event that you're going to. So they're not as confined as in where it's practiced. Number 10, the differences between a professional dominatrix and a lifestyle dominatrix. So the approach to domination differs, is probably the biggest one between a professional dominatrix and someone who is that in their personal life or a lifestyler. Professional dominatrix, this is a service. It's a paid service to clients. It's typically in a professional setting, as I said, a dungeon or a studio. The focus is going to be on the client's needs and goals. It's going to be a tailored session to suit that client's desires, to keep within their limits. It's going to be pre-booked sessions. You book in advance. It has a set duration, an hour, 2 hours, and it ends. A lifestyle dominatrix, it can be practiced as part of their everyday life if you're in a 24/7 relationship with it, meaning that you don't break the power dynamic. Or, during particular times when you're getting intimate, or maybe you do have some set times like 3 p.m. every Sunday afternoon. But they engage in domination for personal fulfillment. Typically you're not going to be paying them. Their dominance is an authentic expression of their identity, and it might not conform to what a traditional BDSM role is. It's really how they feel, what type of dominant they are, and they're going to be expressing that in their personal life. And it can happen in the home. Maybe it's at kink events. Maybe it's just within their personal relationship. So where it happens can also differ a bit as well. So that was our top 10 Googled questions about professional dominatrixes. I hope you have learned a thing or two. And as always, stay kinky.